Welcome to another episode of Stories from the Edge of Life. We once again have Dr. Mulder, who has returned. Welcome back, Dr. Mulder.
Well, thank you, Parag. I'm delighted to be back with you.
Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience one more time, please?
Sure, yeah. I'm John Mulder. I am a hospice and palliative physician. I've been involved in this work for nearly 4 decades, full-time for the last 23 years. I live in the state of Michigan. I've spent virtually all of my professional time here, and I've considered West Michigan my home.
Thank you. And I'm Dr. Parag Bharadwaj. I'm a hospice and palliative medicine physician as well. And I met Dr. Mulder when I was doing my fellowship.
Oh, it's been a little while.
2005.
Yeah.
So welcome back. And in this interview, I would like to pick your brain about, you've said you've done this for 4 decades. What have been your observations about life in general? And can you also share in terms of how your outlook about life might have changed through this work?
Sure, I think that's it's a great question, and none of us really can be involved in this kind of work without being personally impacted. And I would say sometimes positively and sometimes negatively. I would say, but for me, personality-wise, I tend to be a naive optimist. I'm always looking at the glass half full. I'm looking at the positives that occur, and I just start off right off the bat by commenting that what I have seen in the families that I have navigated these waters with, the patients who I've seen facing the grimmest and the bleakest of times, what I've learned is that there can be positives that can come out of any situation. There can be blessings that can be found in each day, no matter how dark it might seem. And so part of how I have shifted over the years is that when I am dealing with patients and families who are walking this journey, dealing with something we can't fix, something that is going to end up being on their death certificate, they know it, I know it, everybody else knows it. There's a point at which some people become very fatalistic. If I'm going to die, then what's the use of living? What's the use of my being around on this particular day? Isn't there something you can give me just to make this go away now? And what I really have learned is that in each day, there are opportunities to find this element of joy. And in many circumstances, that is in relationships, not exclusively in relationships. There are opportunities that people might find joy and blessings in other areas of life. It might be just enjoying the smell of the spring, the spring flowers that are blooming. People can find some beauty in that, and it might be just I live close to Lake Michigan, and we have some of the most spectacular sunsets in the world, and sometimes just going down to the beach and watching the sunset is it's inspiring and meaningful and peaceful all at the same time. So one of the things that I do with my patients and families is really to help them find an element of meaningfulness in this moment. And that starts with, again, helping them identify, for me, I use the word sacred. What is sacred to you? And if I need to explain it further, what is meaningful? If life is short, what is it that you want to be able to accomplish in the time that you have left? And that's sometimes it's work undone, sometimes it's relationships that haven't been mended, but just to find out what's important to them. It became very, very personal to me a few years ago when I was diagnosed with IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And for the non-medical folks that are watching this podcast, it's a lung disease which is universally terminal. People don't survive IPF. I was fortunate because although I still have a compromised life expectancy, I was the beneficiary of a lung transplant, and that's how I addressed my IPF. most people with IPF don't have that opportunity. I was very, very fortunate. But I was placed in this position where I wasn't sure if that was even going to be possible for me. And I was just beginning to reconcile my own mortality in that regard. And you see behind me, I've got some guitars on the wall. I'm a musician, and that's been a meaningful part of my journey of playing and performing, singing, and songwriting. And I hadn't written for a long, long, long time, probably 15 years or so that it had been since I really was seriously doing any element of songwriting. And being thrust into this now terminal situation, I began writing again as an opportunity for my own self-expression and for me to help reconcile what was going on in my thoughts and my mind and my heart. And I ended up writing enough to actually record an album. I got an album that's, for shameless self-promotion. If people want to go on their favorite streaming site, Spotify or iTunes or Amazon, the album is called Joy Wins. And that comes from one of the songs that I wrote during this journey. And I have a line in there that said, and at that moment, when joy and sorrow meet, joy wins. And that's a philosophy that we hung on to, myself, my wife, my family, as we were navigating what we thought were going to be a very short time. Now, it was interesting that when I met with the transplant surgeon for the first time, and I don't know if it's because he knew what I did, but he said, I just want you to understand that transplant is a palliative procedure. And we both sort of chuckled at that for a little bit. I said, he says, we're trading one terminal illness for another. The IPF we think is going to kill you sooner, but once you get a transplant, you're now immunocompromised, and that places its own burden on you. Between the potential for rejection and infections we can't treat. Those that's what's on your horizon. That's what you're getting into. We're just trading one disease for another, and we just hope you'll live longer, with this. So it's a palliative procedure. But that concept that joy wins became our mantra, and we to this day are reflecting on the meaningfulness of that at that moment when joy and sorrow meet, joy wins. And so in my interactions with my patients, I help to dig down to where do they find their joy in life? Where do they find their peace in life? And how can I make sure that the medical plan that's being put into place clears the way for that happening? So often patients can identify that. And I have a simple 4-question algorithm that I work patients through. In fact, I teach this to the medical students. I teach this to lay audiences also. And it's really quite simple. And you're familiar with the model. And that is, what are the doctors telling you? To try to get an idea of, do they know what's going on? I ask them, what's the plan? Do they have a really good idea what the doctors have planned for them at this particular juncture and what lies ahead? And in that, do they really have an understanding of prognosis? So I try to get through those with the first couple of questions. Then the third question is a big one. What is sacred to you? And then the fourth question I ask them, is the plan that's in place helping you achieve what is sacred and meaningful to you? And so that really then becomes the model that I use for helping guide them through decision making. Do we want this treatment or that treatment? Well, does that help you achieve what's important to you, or does it stand in the way of what's important to you? We want to make sure that anything that we're doing, because we understand that at the end of the day, this is not a survivable illness. We want to make sure that your days, weeks, months, hopefully years, are engaged with the pursuit of happiness and joy and meaningfulness, and so that every day has purpose. I was talking with someone once and going through this little algorithm with them, And when I asked, what is sacred, they had a whole long list of things that they needed to, that was of special important and things that they wanted to accomplish. And when I asked, is the plan helping them achieve that? Uh, they thought, and they said, well, I go in for my chemotherapy and I'm sick, 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 sick for a whole week. I just can't do anything. And then I'm kind of weakened for a week and I'm not as sick anymore, but I'm trying to get my strength back. Another week, just when I think I'm finally getting some energy back, I have to go in and get treated again. So no, I've not been able to do anything that I consider meaningful for months because I've been trapped in the cycle. And, I had a gentleman came in once, he was mid-50s. He had a glioblastoma. It had been diagnosed 2 years earlier. He had debulking treatment, couldn't get all of it, but they got a lot of it. Had some chemotherapy, had radiation. And they told him, it's going to come back. Within a couple of years, it'll be back. So I'm meeting him for the first time. He's in my office. And he had just come from his oncologist's office where he was told the tumor's back and it's very, very aggressive. And we need to start chemotherapy and radiation immediately. And he was he was obviously devastated, but he knew this day would come. And here it is. Yeah, but he clearly was perplexed about what to do. And so I asked him the four simple questions. He knew what it was. He knew he was not going to survive this. The docs gave him no concept as to prognosis other than he didn't have a long time. The plan was to start these treatments immediately. So I asked him, I said, did the doctors give you an idea that somehow this intervention, these interventions would cure it, put it into remission? Oh, no, they said there's nothing they can really do to help they're not going to cure it. And they have no idea whether they can put it in remission or not. So I asked him, well, what was the experience like for you the first time you went through these? And he says, oh, I was in bed for 6 months. He said, I was lightheaded. I was dizzy. My mind was foggy. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't walk straight. This chronic nausea. It was miserable. I had this headache all the time. And life was miserable. So then the key question, what is sacred to you? What do you want to be able to accomplish? And he says, my daughter's getting married in 3 weeks. I really want to be able to walk her down the aisle and to be able to dance with her at the reception. And so I said, well, my recommendations would be that you don't start the chemotherapy and radiation right now. Now, just as an aside, some people would think that's paternalistic. I'm trying to tell a patient what to do rather than giving them options and choices. I don't agree with that assessment because my recommendations were based entirely on what is important to him. What I told him is I'm concerned that if you went ahead with those treatments, not only would you not be able to walk her down the aisle, you may not even be able to be in a position to make it to the wedding. So my recommendation was you just hit the pause button. Don't do that right now. And I said, one of the advantages of connecting with the palliative physician is here's one thing I do know all about: performance enhancing drugs. And I know that in some circles, perhaps if you're a professional athlete or an Olympian, that's a bad phrase, performance enhancing drugs. But in the hands of a palliative physician, it's good stuff, right? So we made some changes to his regimen, and especially about 2 days before the wedding, I guess in the vernacular of the athletes, we juiced him. We were able to get him on some medications that would really help his level of strength, his level of alertness, his level of energy. He was using a cane at the time. He actually put the cane aside and he walked his daughter down the aisle. And he danced with her at the reception. And he died 3 days later. And I would submit that was a really positive end-of-life experience. That had he started these therapies, it would have been a very, very different 3 weeks for him and would have been a different outcome. I don't know whether he would have lived longer or not. I don't know whether he would live shorter or not. But I do know that he got exactly what he wanted based exactly on what was important to him. I was able to understand where his joy was. And for him, joy wins. It did exactly what he needed it to do. And so, how have I been impacted? I have really striven not only with my patients but with me as well to make sure that I'm intentional about that, what is positive and meaningful in life, um, and that's where I draw my strength, and that's where my focus is.
Dr. Mulder, you've left me speechless. Thanks for sharing your personal experience and that particular story. And you summarize it so well in terms of your what your philosophy is and helping you get through life on a day by day basis. Very positive outlook, which I think we all can learn from. That is joy wins. Um, you mentioned that you have an album, and so what's the name of the album?
Well, sure. The one that I reference is called Joy Wins. That's
Right,
the
right.
title of the album.
Okay, that's the
Um,
okay. Just wanted to make sure.
yeah, yeah, and depending upon your audience, again, this is less shameless self-promotion. But I worked with a friend of mine. Her name is Trisha Walker. She's a Grammy award-winning singer-songwriter, um, uh, very very talented artist, and she's written for and performed with many people that would be well familiar to folks. I've known Trisha for 30 years plus, and we worked on a project together that we drew stories um, from people that work in hospice. We had little songwriting sessions with hospice workers, and we crafted those stories and reflections into songs and did another album called The World Around the Bed. And so these are all songs that have been generated from the experiences of people that work in hospice. It's dedicated for them. All the proceeds go to the National Hospice Foundation, and so that's just another way of where we feel that music is a powerful communicator, and these a lot of these people were able to express their reactions and reflections, and we were able to help them express it through song, where sometimes just written word and stories are not quite as effective. So again, available wherever you like to stream or purchase your your electronic music. So
Thank you for sharing that information. Dr. Muller, let me ask you this, and feel free to not answer this question. You can just say pass if you don't want to. Um, so you've dealt with hospice patients most of your career. Now you mentioned your personal experience in terms of what you're going through. Has that created a shift in you, brought about a shift in your mind in terms of how you um, approach your work?
Boy, that's a great question. In terms of how I approach my work, um, I think that I sense a greater sense of urgency in helping patients and families get to what really matters. Okay. We have this sense, many years ago, 20 some years ago, there's a song by a country singer, Tim McGraw, called Live Like You Were Dying. And the implication was that if you know you're dying, you're going to be living differently, grabbing the meaningfulness and the joy in today, not putting off till tomorrow. What is it? Carpe diem is the old Latin phrase there. Carpe diem. I've never studied Latin, so I don't know, but kind of live for today. And I think that there's a meaningful balance that we can bring that philosophy into our day-to-day life. And so rather than just highlighting this is the problem and this is how we're going to fix it, and I would say that I'm going to take that into my own field of palliative medicine as well. I mean, I've certainly recognized in the previous podcast, and this would be a pitch to listen to the other one if you haven't already. We talk about the kind of medical profession that focuses on identifying broken things and trying to fix them. So the doctor is fine. It's very, very transactional. Okay, this is what's wrong. This is how we're going to fix it. And I would submit that even in our field, we can be a little transactional. This is the pain, and this is what I'm going to give you to take care of the pain. Okay. It's going to fix what's broken right at that particular moment. And I think that my experiences have just motivated me to make sure I'm always going one level deeper. Okay. Are we accomplishing the things that need to be accomplished? Are we looking beyond the pain to how this patient is functioning? Are we, are we finding out how they're adapting to their illness? How has this impacted their life, their work, their job, their relationships? Um, are there we're finding strengthening? Are we finding weakening in some of these areas? And so I always spend a little more time making sure we're navigating those waters with the patients as well. And in terms of how it's influenced my own personal life, and even before my diagnosis and even before the transplant, when I would see patients who, for example, they're preparing for retirement, and that day finally comes and they hang up the shingle, they're going to enjoy travel and time with grandkids and all this stuff, and 6 months later they're diagnosed with cancer from which they're not going to survive. And that really has motivated me to make sure that I am engaged as possible with the people and the processes and the things that are important to me on a day-to-day basis. I mentioned that a lot of medicine is transactional. It needs to be relational. I think a lot of life is transactional, and it needs to be relational. So I really focus on the relational aspects of both my patients' families and for myself. What am I doing this particular day to enhance the relationships that are important to me? Because I may or may not have the opportunity to do that tomorrow or next week. So I've been blessed. My wife and I share 8 kids, and we have 12 grandkids with the 13th on the way. There's not a day that goes by that we're not focused on, is there something that I can be or ought to be doing? Might be a simple text to one of my kids, or this is an example. I have an older grandson. He reached out to me a few days ago and said, "Hey, Grandpa, you want to play golf?" I said, "I'd love to play golf." So yesterday I was on the golf course with my grandson. Okay. I don't know that I would have done that 10 years ago. I would have said, well, let's wait till the weather's better, till the season changes, till whatever, but no, absolutely I'm going to do that, because it was a special afternoon that I had with my grandson. And so for me, family and friends, I have a little algorithm, not even algorithm, I just have a list of, go through my contact list every now and then and say, I haven't connected with him for a while, I need to give him a call, text and email, just say, how you doing? It might have been 6 months, it might have been a year, it might have been 4 or 5 years, but he's on my mind and I want to just see how he's doing. And so those are the things that, were I not as attuned to the brevity of life, that I might not be inclined to do. And I think that every time you foster a positive aspect of relationship, that something positive is going to happen. It's going to be a good moment in a good day. So the more that I have the opportunity to do that, and the more that I can help my patients do that, I think that it adds a really positive dimension to the work that we do.
Yeah, I'll go back to what you said earlier. I think you made a self-diagnosis. You are an optimist, without doubt.
I use the term naive optimist, because sometimes I just I dive ahead with a positive plan, even if it may have a dismal outlook. I just, and the other, I see the other tangent to that is, I always presume good intentions. That's how I have, there are people that live life somewhat skeptically, both in terms of life and in professions. You have seen this in other professionals you've worked with, that assume that everyone who's asking for opioids must somehow be suspicious that they're substance use disorder, or that they have malintent. So that perspective leaches into our professional lives as well. But I just always presume that someone, even if they do something that is hurtful, harmful, or non-productive, their intentions may have been really, really good, and they just didn't execute well. Um, and so, by assuming good intention, I just presume that people don't have any malintent toward me or anything else. And I don't know, I sleep well at night, so it's working for me.
I think in the end, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, right.
So, Dr. Mulder, we touched upon a very interesting situation that you shared with us in the previous interview, where you were taking care of a dying patient, and
Yes.
medically, it was sort of like a puzzle as to why the patient wasn't declining further and surpassed the expectation when it came to the prognosis. So we see that often in our profession. What is your take on it when we are not able to explain things medically, and they defy, and patient situations defy what we have learned uh, in our trainings?
Yeah, I think it's again a great question, and I think that um, the one caution that I would have is that kind of my observation is that when doctors feel flummoxed, when they are not sure what's going on, and more importantly, not sure what to do next, they have a tendency to back away in the midst of that uncertainty because they feel that the patients are, excuse me, the patients are wanting something definitive and something certain. And if we can't deliver to them that certainty, then somehow we're failing them. And so physicians have a tendency to want to back away in those uncertain moments. I have a tendency to run to them in those uncertain moments, to be able to put right up front. There's some things that we can't explain. Medical science is not perfect, and we just have to appreciate that we live in the midst of this element of uncertainty. That's just going to surround us no matter what we're doing, where we are. But what is certain is that I will never leave your side. I will be here. I will support you. I will help to navigate this with you. I will explain things. I may not have seen this particular circumstance before, but I have seen similar circumstances. And so I can use that background, I can use that knowledge, I can use that experience as we navigate this together. I don't know why she's not done. I don't know what's going on there. But what I know is that I can keep her comfortable. We can wait. We can enjoy these moments. And even though it's not what we had planned, maybe it's off of the time sequence you had expected. At this moment, it is what it is. And we're just simply going to be silent in this moment and accept that this is what it is. She's comfortable, and we're going to continue to be with you and to support you as you begin to navigate your grief through this process. So I think that acknowledging the uncertainty, promising non-abandonment, I think are two really, really important aspects of how we manage that.
Very well put. So, Dr. Mulder, before we wind up, you've had such a vast experience over the years. What is your conclusion? What is life all about?
Whoa. Yeah, that's quite something to wind up on. I I think that there's some practical. Um, well, let me back this. They're both secular and spiritual responses to that answer, and and I can tell you what it is for me. I can't necessarily translate that to what someone else's perspective is. I believe in God. I believe in a higher power. And I believe that I respect and I humbly acknowledge that I'm not in control of what happens in this world. Um, that our bodies and our experiences have been knit together, and so I strive to, it's more than just being a good person. I try to do what's right. I try to, and for me that means respecting others, acknowledging others, respecting the gifts in them that I believe are God-given gifts in them as well. Finding that good in someone, and believing the good intentions in others, and that at the end of the day, that that I will have this sense of peace and this sense of joy, because I have placed others first in my life, that I have acknowledged the reality of God in this world. I've honored him or her. I don't make any stipulations on the gender of our Creator. That's what the glorifying that, and living life in the light of that goodness, and trying to transcend that and to share that and to be a part of that with others, is what I believe. And so I can't separate that spiritual self from what I do in life. I believe that no matter what someone's religious persuasion is, that there is a spiritual side to them, and I really try to acknowledge that and help people identify how that their spirituality, their meaningfulness, where they find meaning and purpose in life, can be identified and expressed in the process of their living, particularly living through very, very difficult and desperate times.
Thank you. I can't resist to ask this question though.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think that your spirituality led you to what you're doing, or what you are doing made you more spiritual?
Well, I think that it's a very fluid thing. It's both. It's both and. I think that being in tune with my spiritual nature has, guides me. I believe that that there's a purpose and God-given talents that we all have, and as if we strive to use those in a positive, productive way that helps others, that's a part of our our spirit guiding us. And I think that it's a positive feedback loop, right? And as soon as you find that bears fruit, it just reinforces the strength of our spiritual nature, and the strength of our belief is reinforced. And so I think it's both. I think it's both and.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mulder. I could go on forever in terms of picking your brain. But thank you so much for your time. I hope you will be back. I would like to talk to you about a few more things, and you're such a wealth of knowledge, and you have very positive insights towards how you look at life. So hope you have you back, and thanks for all that you've done throughout your career.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and if we do it again, I'll look forward to that again too.
Thank you.